How's everybody doing today? Today for this week's video we're going to be talking about getting some brand new jigs in the mail and how I like to take those jigs from point A to point B, where I buy them stock, and how I want to fish them. A traditional jig, you know, is just kind of typical design. They're all very similar. The jigs I like to use are J&J jigs. They're made here in Oregon. And in my opinion, they're leaps and bounds above other jigs that you can buy from retail stores and things like that. First and foremost, I'll have you guys check out the hook. That's the hook on a 3/8 ounce model brush jig. As you can see, the hidden eye brush jig mold is a very common mold. The advantages and disadvantages of different jigs are all, you know, pretty similar in head design, weed guards, skirts, components, you know, how the skirt's put on, and then from hooks and so forth. As you can see also here, that it's got a high quality hook, and the skirt has a plastic collar, and it also has a wire tag end on it. That's because Justin wires the skirt on every single jigs, and they won't fall off, like, no matter what. They're not going to. My third favorite thing about this jig is that the weed guard is perfect. It's just what you want. A lot of companies will have a flipping jig with a soft weed guard, and you don't want that because you're going to get snagged more. And his weed guard consistency is about perfect for what I like to do. And the last thing that I like about these jigs is that the head design. When I first started working with Justin a few years ago, his clear coat was solid, but it was kind of like industry standard type clear coat. Well, I voiced my concerns and complaints with him, and he came out with a new clear coat that I've been fishing for a couple years now, and it's the most insane jig clear coat I've ever seen in my life. As you can see, it looks normal. I mean, this clear coat can take a beating. I fish, pretty rocky lakes, and you can drag it up a point, and bring it in after a day's fishing, and all you have is little scuffs. You have no paint showing. It's pretty amazing. So anyways, we're going to jump on into it. When you first buy a jig, a lot of times they have this kind of a moppy look. It's pretty long. It goes past the hook by quite a bit, and it just kind of is, like I said, kind of moppy. My favorite thing, what I do first thing with my jigs, is just grab them and just cut straight across. A lot of these jigs I already did this. I just like to cut it straight across. It's right there, a little bit below the hook, 1/4 inch or whatever. I don't do it to all of them, but most of them I do this too, and you can see it flares it a little more. It brings it a little bit more compact. My thinking is, when I'm fishing a jig, a lot of times all I want my jig to do is accent my trailers. So if I have a little beaver on here or something, we'll see if we have a rigged up jig in here, something like that. See, it's not a ton of skirt, but it's a lot of trailer. I like that personally, but it all depends on the type of jig and what kind of fishing I want to be doing. So that's the first thing I do. Then if I want my jig a little bit more bushy, a little bit more gnarly looking, like I usually do, I like to cut and thin the skirt. And what I do is I thin it upward, like a 30-degree angle. And I like that 30-degree angle because I'm kind of picky. And instead of having the ends of all my skirts being totally flat, they have small points on them, as you might be able to see. Small little points. And I like that. It's just a little bit less surface area towards the end of that skirt, You can rip out some strands too and prim and proper however you want, and here you go. I like that a little more. It's just a little bit bushier, That's what I like in a jig. For some reason, it's what is produced for me. The thing I do after that is check the weed guard. A lot of times makers have weed guards that go, almost to the end of your hook. You don't want that. I like my weed guards to go at the most, this one's already been trimmed, to the barb of the hook. This one's actually going to get trimmed a little bit more. And what I do is I take it and I don't go straight across. I like, it's not quite a 45, but it's not quite a 90. It's, maybe a 60-degree angle or something. It's not totally critical. It's just my preference, So there's a flipping jig. That's like what I'd fish. Just like that. If I'm fishing for big bass, I'll keep the whole skirt on it, whatever, But this is like my tournament flipping jig style setup, selection, from color to skirt, trim, etc. So for football jigs, let's see if I can find a new football jig in here. Oh, right there. All right, so this one hasn't been trimmed very much yet, and as you can see, it's pretty bushy football jig. Again, I'm going to go across it, cut it up a little bit. Eventually my end product, I want it to look something like this. Real bushy, real small. It's gonna accent my trailer. This is probably something that I'll fish with like a Yamamoto twin tail. And that's really my favorite type of cut right there. Just like that. You know, it's bushy, it's got some flare in the water, the skirt strands are gonna expand. And what I do to get the top, you know, matching the bottom but still have that, you know, rotund flare is I'll grab my jig upside down and you know, separate the skirt so all the ones that are going down are still going down. And you guys are all familiar with like a finesse cut style jig. This is very similar to that, except it's not as extreme. Let's see if we can get this here. Just about. Okay, so grab it just like that. And what you want to do is, instead of cutting it like a finesse style cut right there and you have a very small flare, you know, similar to this, even that's a little bit extreme, you want to do it, you know, grab your fingers, hold your jig, take just the top off. Boom. And you get that nice thick flare. It's like a finesse cut, but it's not. And then what I like to do at the bottoms is just rip them. Just take some off, and there you go. You got a nice little finesse-y cut, but you know, it's flaring. It's gonna have a lot of action. That's what I like in a jig. You guys might like something different, but that's definitely my favorite. Here's another cut. It's just similar to a finesse cut, and you know, that's gonna be something that's gonna have some sort of crawl trailer on it or whatnot. But that's really all I do to my jigs is I trim the weed guard, you know, make sure my hooks are sharp. They always are with Justin's jigs, you know. Make sure the skirt's good. I like to trim them up, like I said. A lot of times I'll trim upwards at a, you know, a 60-degree angle, say, and it gets, you know, the ends of the strands a little bit more pointy. Not that it really matters. And then with these guys, you know, I like a bushy little football jig. It's just my preference, and that's what I do to all my jigs. You know, I just bought, I don't know, a couple pounds of jigs, and all these need to be trimmed similar. You know, I've got some bigger black and red jigs here that I might not trim quite as extreme, but I've already gone through and trimmed off a lot of what was there. You know, it all depends on what you want to achieve out of a jig, but that's the general, you know, consultation for me on jig fishing as far as trimming your skirts and stuff. There's a couple different styles I really like. If I'm going for really big fish, I'll keep them pretty bushy, but I like a little one that flares out a lot, you know, or a flipping jig that does the same. So hopefully this video helped you guys in some way. You know, maybe some of you guys do very similar modifications to your jigs. I'd highly recommend it. I think it's maybe not going to be a punch for punch difference where one's getting bit and one's not, but I think it does matter in some cases. So stay tuned for next week's video. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's video, and we'll catch up with you guys later.